Okay, we will resume our council meeting. Welcome back, council. I will begin this afternoon session with the Indigenous Territorial Acknowledgement. We would like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather, land on which we are broadcasting from today, is the land traditionally cared for by the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, Chinootan people. We also acknowledge the enduring presence and deep traditional knowledge and philosophies of the Indigenous people with whom we share this land today. And I will also just do a brief moment of reflection. At the beginning of this council meeting, we pause to think about the needs of our community. May we show wisdom and compassion in all our decisions. So we'll be on to the disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. Anything to declare, council? Yep, go ahead, Councillor Freeman.
Do I need to declare for the in-camera since you went in-camera before me? Just related to some items on the in-camera agenda.
Thank you. And Councillor Hanmer had declared in advance, so thank you for those two declarations. We need a mover and a seconder for the approval of the minutes from April 22nd and April 29th. Moved by Councillor Wright, seconded by Councillor Freeman. All in favor? That is carried. There's a consent motion. There's a number of items there under consent. And just a quick note that the 2024 Asset Management Plan, thank you, Cassandra, Ms. Pacey, that is tabled today. It's under consent because it'll be back for discussion on June 17th. It's a lengthy document, so we will all take the time to review it. Just wanted to note that for anyone listening that we will be discussing that on June 17th. So with that, are there anything that anyone wants to pull from consent? Seeing none, all right, I'll need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Hanmer, seconded by Councillor Rowe. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you, Council. So moving right along to staff reports. We have staff report 2025 University Avenue East for affordable housing. And Michelle Lee, who is our executive officer for the city. Thank you, Michelle, for being present today and preparing this report and the consultation, and we will turn it over to you.
Thanks, Mayor McCabe and Council. Last month, Council directed staff to engage with the community on the potential use of 2025 University Avenue East for an affordable and attainable housing development. This report highlights the feedback received, some changes to the original proposal, and then highlights next steps. 2025 University Avenue East was designated or is designated employment in the city's official plan. It's also zoned for employment E127, which permits employment buildings of up to 8 or 9 stories approximately. For a variety of reasons, this site has sat vacant since 2000. And so recognizing the need for affordable and attainable housing in the city, as well as across Ontario for that matter, along with strat plan directions and affordable housing strategy directions, that we look to optimizing the use of our city-owned lands for community objectives. We sought out to determine if there were any parcels in the city that were appropriate for an affordable housing development. We landed on this parcel as being the most appropriate given a number of factors, including its size and the absence of immediate uses on the site. The proposal is to seek provincial approval through a ministerial zoning order to convert the lands from employment to a mixed-use residential use. To enable this to happen, we would release an RFP, which is a request for proposals, to solicit proposals from not-for-profits that meet the city's requirements. Those requirements would be set out in a terms of reference that I'll detail in more detail later in the presentation. We would approve the development. Council would actually have a decision to make in December to approve a preferred proposal, and then we would secure the requirements that we set out in the terms of reference through conditions of sale, if a sale were to happen, through site plan agreements and various other legal agreements. So we did engage with the public. We created a website and an online survey and got 74 responses as of last Friday. We also carried out a public information session May 8th, and we communicated to a variety of individuals by email and over the phone. We did some preliminary outreach to Indigenous communities, and those conversations are ongoing. We also reached out to development and housing professionals just to try and understand what are the constraints and considerations when developing a large site like this for affordable and attainable housing. And we reached out to various agencies and organizations that typically do have an interest and input to provide on any developments, and in particular housing development of this size and scale. The report highlights the feedback and it categorizes it into main themes. And I've highlighted most of those themes here today. The top line reflects those themes that we heard from the broader community and Indigenous communities. And the bottom line reflects the feedback we heard from housing proponents. So just summarizing that feedback, we heard that there was a concern about the impact of a residential development of this scale on the rural and suburban character of the surrounding area in close proximity to the site. We heard from the community that there was a need for more affordable and attainable housing, and some individuals encouraged us to go a little bit more assertively towards higher heights and higher densities to maximize the potential use of this site. We heard from a number of individuals about concerns for the environment, particularly the local natural features that were located on the site, as well as individuals that wanted to see a development that would be sustainable in terms of things like net zero or green building design, and operate with maximum operational efficiency going into the future. We did hear widely from the community that there was a shortage of commercial opportunities in this part of the city, and that any future development on this site, if it were to proceed, should have some commercial opportunities, not only to service the individuals living on that site, but also individuals living in the broader east side of the city. We heard concerns about traffic and how traffic was going to be managed and mitigated on those that are already living in that part of the city. And we heard about concerns about the timing of construction and the impacts of construction, particularly in light of the fact that there's at least one other development application in progress just down the street on Millennium Boulevard. In terms of the feedback we received from the housing providers that we interviewed, we confirmed, I think we're fairly confident on this, but we confirmed that affordable and attainable housing is really challenging to build in this current market, given high construction costs, and so incentives and subsidies can really help achieve higher levels of affordability and attainability. We also confirmed that what we knew already, but it's always good to kind of continue to confirm this, and that is that allowing for a mix of affordability, so some deeply affordable units, but then some more sort of lower end of market units, can help a developer balance the costs, whereby the market units end up helping to subsidize the more deeply affordable units. We were encouraged to create a flexible zoning framework so that there could be a mix of heights and densities across the site. Also recognizing that since the process is fairly unique in that we're seeking a ministerial zoning order, it could be very challenging to make tweaks to that zoning once the zoning is in place. So making sure that there's flexibility in the case that there might be some technical considerations that we didn't foresee. It was recommended. We also heard that as low as possible parking ratios were encouraged so that the housing providers could set the parking ratios that they felt were appropriate for the particular housing developments that they were proposing was a desirable thing from their vantage point. And also, they encouraged us to consider density and how we measure density so that the site's zoning didn't constrain the potential number of family-sized units, should that be a desire of council. So in terms of addressing this feedback, many of the items that came forward through the public consultation, we feel are fairly aligned with what the objectives are of the affordable housing strategy. Also, considerations that are typically considered in any development proposal. So specifically speaking to affordability, those that were questioning how would these units be secured, can we maximize the number of affordable units? That would be the objective of staff, to seek to maximize the number of affordable and attainable units while still trying to ensure that we're creating a balanced and feasible development. We'd be looking at a variety of models to ensure that the units would remain in community ownership, so that could include cooperative housing, and it could include other models. So what we're wanting to do in a request for proposals is really encourage the development community to come forward with creative solutions that will ensure that these units remain in community ownership and are affordable and attainable in perpetuity. Regarding the complete community feedback we received and the desire for commercial uses, we can require a mix of uses in the zoning framework that I'm going to describe in a subsequent slide. We have switched gears a little bit. Instead of focusing entirely on a residential development, we are going to be proposing that we consider a mixed-use development that includes some commercial, possibly on the ground floor, and maybe in some buildings, it could be on the second and third floor. The environmental concerns would be addressed through an environmental impact study, which is fairly typical for a site of this size. And that study would look at any significant natural features and make recommendations on how to mitigate impacts on those features. We'd also require and encourage, through our RFP process, sustainability measures. And you can do that in a variety of ways by basically assigning points in your evaluation process, awarding more points for those that come up with the most concrete and effective sustainability measures. And then lastly, traffic. We recognize that the proposal would bring traffic to this side of the city, and so that would be studied through a traffic impact study, and we'd understand what the impacts were and work to mitigate those impacts. On the right-hand side of your screen, you can see that process that I referred to, where these elements can be secured through that process, and they remain at the city's discretion all the way up to the development agreements, which can allow us to ensure that we are ensuring the outcomes that we intended to have. This proposed vision on the site, or on the side, is to get everybody excited, but this is not a design for this site. This is actually something that I extracted from Vision Soho Alliance in London, Ontario. It's a large property with a variety of buildings of mixed heights and densities. It's a consortium of not-for-profits that are working together to create affordable and attainable houses for seniors, for those that have deep affordability needs, and then for people who are seeking other types of housing that aren't being offered in the market. The vision that we're proposing today is slightly modified from the previous vision in that we are recommending that we consider commercial uses in addition to the residential uses. But the remainder of the uses would remain the same. So the primary objective of this site would be to produce affordable and attainable units, and that those units would have a variety of tenures, so rental and ownership, and that we would achieve a high level of sustainability on the site. To implement this vision, we're proposing a zoning, taking the E127 zone and seeking the province's support for an MZO that would allow us to bring forward a residential mixed-use zoning, RMU 40, which would permit up to 12 stories across the site. But further to that, we would be putting restrictions on through the RFP process on how high you could build in the northern portion of the property. So the idea would be that while the broader framework allows for 40 meters or 12 stories, more specifically, that would be limited to the bottom portion of the site in terms of height. The upper portion of the upper portion of the property would be permitted up to 9 stories, which is close to what's currently permitted on the site under the current employment zoning. We would also be proposing some site-specific zoning as part of our package to the ministry, whereby we would modify the setbacks a little bit just to recognize that the property faces 4 roads, and we typically have different setbacks for road-facing street frontages. And we'll be working with planning approvals on a parking ratio that is deemed appropriate for this site, recognizing that we want to manage parking and manage automobile use, but still make sure that the development is a viable development. And then the built form piece would reflect the fact that RMU 40 doesn't currently permit townhouses and some of those missing middle pieces. So we would be expanding the uses to enable townhouse usage as well on this site. In terms of next steps, we're seeking Council's direction through this report to proceed with an MZO. And if Council deems it appropriate, we would proceed with that request at the end of this month or early June, as soon as we're able to assemble the materials needed as part of that request. We would be in June starting to develop the terms of reference and evaluate the various development options that we'd like to see on the site. We would probably do an informal touch base with Council on the principles of what we're trying to achieve to ensure that we're on the right track. And then we'd release an RFP to the community in July, seeking proposals for development of the site. The goal would be to receive those proposals back and evaluate them with a selection of a preferred proposal by November, and then in December bring that recommendation to Council with the preferred proponent with the idea of by 2025 starting the site plan process and, if all goes well, building towards the end of 2025 or into 2026. That's it for my presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Michelle, for that presentation and for the work that you've done. I know it was a pretty daunting request to get that much consultation done in a short period of time. So really appreciate all the extra work and through to you, to the staff who assisted you with that. Appreciate all the extra time that went into that to gather this information. So thank you very much. So Council, questions? Councillor Rowe. And
thank you, through you, Chair. Thank you so much, Michelle, for that presentation. I'm wondering if you can just provide the sort of some direction in terms of ownership of the land, whether the city maintains the land, lease it, like what that can look like.
Certainly. Through the Mayor to Councillor Rowe. So there are a number of ways we could proceed, and I think the way I would recommend is to work under the principle that we want to make sure that these lands remain in community ownership of some kind, and reward proposals, higher marks for those who propose that the land remain in community ownership. It's possible that if we think that land lease is a viable option, and I think it's certainly something worth considering, we could award proposals that have a land lease as part of their package, meaning that we would own it, but we would lease the land to a developer that would then build and operate the development. That could be awarded the highest set of marks in our evaluation of proposals, and then other models could come after that, such as cooperative housing, not-for-profit owned housing. So that's the way I would recommend we proceed, so that we're not narrowing our options. It's quite possible that there will be no proponents that can make it work financially through a land lease. We know that does require special financing, and not all developments or developers have that ability. So this would allow us to cast a broad net and still rank them in accordance with the principles that we're trying to achieve.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hanmer.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Councillor Rowe asked one of my questions, but I did have two. Michelle, thank you for the presentation, and I must admit, when I saw the drawing inside, I thought, oh, this is a really good plan. However, knew that it was only conceptual, so it's still good to have something visual that can happen there. Just on your timeline, you talked about we'll be putting the application in for the MZO, but nowhere in there is when we get the response back. And so if you could just highlight, I appreciate we need to still keep going our process. However, is that going to be a limiting factor somewhere along the line?
Through the Mayor, to Councillor Hanmer. The province hasn't ever given us an indication of how quickly they would proceed with a decision. We do have some idea, though. Typically, they put requests up on the ERO, the Environmental Registry, for 30 days. That's the process they're now proposing. And so we know that 30 days minimum would be part of their process. We would be hoping for a decision, by midsummer, perhaps mid-August, so that we could then proceed. So I think what the plan would be to proceed as if there is a positive response from the province, but recognizing we're not actually in control of that process. So it is a limiting factor. I will add one more thing, though, and that is that the intention of MZOs is for fairly rapid, streamlined decision-making. Or at least that's one of the intentions. So their objectives of quick decision-making are aligned with our objectives, so we would hope to see a fast response.
And keep the project moving, thank you.
Yeah.
The other comment I wanted to make was I appreciated in your report the feedback that you received and the modifications that you made to the proposals that are going forward based on that feedback. So I think that's important to recognize, so thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bodley.
Excuse me, through you, Mayor McCabe. My question is about the Indigenous consultation piece. Obviously, a very short time frame to get consultation with Indigenous communities. What's noted in our report here is that they are looking for an EIS and draft site plan, and obviously that's a little bit further down the road in this process. And I'm curious if we are intending to continue to engage with Indigenous communities throughout this process, perhaps throughout the terms of the development of the terms of reference, and whether or not there's a potential that Indigenous consultation could potentially be a part of the terms of reference in terms of evaluating RFPs that come forward.
Through the Mayor, to Councillor Bodley. Yes, that is our intention. We recognized initially when we reached out to the various Indigenous communities that what we were asking for, feedback on this development when there is no development to evaluate and there's no environmental impact statement to look at the impacts, it was very difficult for them to provide feedback. And so we agreed to work with them through this process. The intention is to bring the terms of reference for the EIS specifically to those Indigenous communities that have expressed an interest to review it, to incorporate their feedback into that, and then to launch that work. We could definitely also bring forward or share the RFP more broadly with those who've expressed interest as well. I think, though, that the responses we received to date suggest that the main interest was environmental considerations, but certainly that doesn't mean that we can't share the bigger picture as well.
Thank you, Councillor. Other questions? Councillor Bassick.
Thanks, through you, Mayor McCabe. It's not a question, just a comment. And I'm glad to see the additional height proposed there based on the feedback, the community feedback. I did want to tell you that I really loved your PowerPoint presentation. Whatever my learning style is, was just like, oh, this is perfect. It really made me pay attention. Yes, anyways, when we were at the opening of the autonomous washroom on Friday, What struck me there was there's that newer building that's still under construction, and it's 9 stories, and it's right by those other newer-ish builds that are on George Street. And while some could say, well, Uptown is made for more density, so that's appropriate there, when you're standing there, it feels entirely fine. And so I appreciate the increased density. I appreciate that it came from the community feedback, and I think it's going to feel fine, even though it will be a change. So thanks so much for all your work on it.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Freeman.
Through you, Mayor McCabe. A lot of the questions that I would have asked have been asked, so I'm not going to repeat those, but I do want to thank you for putting in the consultation. I know that it wasn't in the original plan, and I think I really like too how you identified where in the process that some of the concerns that people raised in the ward around traffic in particular would be addressed, where they would be addressed, how they would be addressed, and I would say that the comments that you've outlined here are similar to those that I've received, whether it was by email or comments that I've seen on social media sites such as community Facebook sites. And a lot of individuals in my ward said that they either attended the meeting or they participated in the survey online. And I'm hopeful that as things progress, that when we do have a plan, for example, that we can go back to that engaged platform and seek feedback on each step of the process. And while I appreciate that things like traffic reports come to the city and they get reviewed by the region because we aren't the transportation reviewers as a city, I think it's still helpful to point to these reports so that people know how to find them. It's very difficult to find all the pieces to a planning application on the city's website. So I do appreciate that, and I certainly tried to amplify the message to get people engaged in the process. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Freeman. Any other comments or questions by staff? I just had one, because my questions have been asked as well, just around the water. I know when I was at the consultation, there were some questions, the in-person consultations, there were some questions around like the quantity of water, is there enough water, water management, things around that nature. Just wondering if you could comment on that for a proposal of this size.
Yes, to you, Mayor. Definitely we heard back from individuals living close to the site that either know people that are on well water or maybe are on well water themselves, that they were concerned that a development in this location might cause their wells to run dry or impact them in a negative way. And they cited experiences in the past of that happening when I think University Avenue was being constructed. So with that in mind, we would be conducting well monitoring in advance and during the construction to ensure that we are not impacting those wells.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. So seeing no other, well, I guess the follow-up question to that would be, and if they are impacting, then what happens next?
To you, Mayor. I would have to seek advice from our engineering staff on how to mitigate the impact. So I think the idea is first detecting that there is an impact, and then if there are impacts, then figuring out what can be done. I would note, though, that municipal services are available along Country Squire Drive where those wells are located, so there is also an opportunity to connect to municipal services.
Great. Thank you very much for that clarification. That's really helpful. So similar to what some other councillors have said, I really too do appreciate the adjustments that you've made to the proposal based on the community consultation and the feedback that we heard. And it was quite impactful at the in-person consultation. I was quite frankly surprised by the amount of people who said, you know what, like, let's go bigger. Let's really make this something special with, increased amenities and some added height and things like that. So, so it was really good to hear that coming from the community. So thank you very much. for the work that you've done, as we said earlier, and we'll move on now. We've got 2 delegations to speak to this item. The first one being Sean Campbell, who is the Executive Director of Union Sustainable Development Co-op. Welcome, Sean. Welcome to, you can put it rises, there's a, yeah, there we go.
A little bit taller than Michelle.
Yeah, a little bit taller, yeah.
Well, thanks everybody for the opportunity to be here today. This is such an exciting proposal. Normally, when folks like myself in the affordable housing space are coming before council, we're telling you all the reasons why we're in a housing crisis, which by this point you know inside and out, but of course that's my job. So I'm gonna remind you really quick that here in Waterloo region, not only are we the fastest community in terms of growth in Canada, we've now hit a point where in order to rent a 1-bedroom apartment, we need an income of $77,000 a year and over $100,000 a year to rent a 2-bedroom apartment. That's wild. That's truly, truly wild. I know for myself, my first apartment was not $1,900 a month for a 1-bedroom. I'm fortunate enough, I'm a renter myself, that I've been in my current home for long enough that I'm paying less than $1,350 a month, including utilities for my home. But for anyone new who's a recent graduate, who's recent coming to our community as a new nurse, as a construction worker, as a teacher, those rates just aren't available for you. If you're fortunate enough that you may be able to find a home within someone else's home in a single family home, you don't receive many of the protections of the Residential Tenancies Act. If you're able to find a more discounted rent within an older apartment buildings where rents can still be affordable, you're at risk of being pushed out through rent eviction or other tactics in order to quickly drive up the returns for the current or a new investor. So we need to think as a community, how do we push past this? Well, you've presented the option right here. This is wonderful. There's so many things to like about this proposal. We are able to build within our existing built-up area to show that, yes, we can have smart growth that's making efficient use of existing municipal resources without sprawling out onto our countryside and our drinking water reservoirs. We're able to increase the number of folks who are living along already well-serviced areas with great transit, with municipal amenities close by at Rim Park. But by increasing the density, we can actually now make the case to the region to increase public transit readiness out in that area as well. One of the great examples of how bringing affordable housing to an area can actually make it better for all the existing neighbors as well. Taking this green space that we have that's vacant at the moment and thinking about adding parks and trails underneath the hydro wires that you can't build under. Could we create a whole trail system that connects into Rim Park and new park spaces for kids and families who are growing up in that area right now? For Union Cooperative, we're a community-owned organization. We have over 240 members now. People who stepped forward and decided that they weren't going to wait for someone else to bring a solution, but instead were going to identify it themselves. We purchased our first building 2 years ago, almost, a year and a half, with 60 apartments, all 2-bedroom, and we're able to now offer rents that are under $1,425 a month for a 2-bedroom, as low as $1,000 a month. That is able to keep house folks who are already living there within this existing apartment building, but we're also able to welcome in new folks who face different barriers to accessing homes. We have tenants coming from Women's Crisis Services, new Canadians joining us as well. But if you walk through our neighborhood, if you walk through our building, it looks the same as it did before we bought it. The only difference is now we're improving the building because we're a community organization that's dedicated to making this space better, because for us, this is home. So when we think about this type of neighborhood and the addition of new folks, think of, and I often joke that Union Co-op, really, we're the co-op time machine. We're rolling rents back 10 years ago. This isn't radical, deeply low affordable rents, although those are needed too and should be included in every community. Instead, what we're thinking about are rents that are affordable and were affordable 10 years ago that have drastically outpaced the increase of rents, of Ontario Works and Disability, of the fixed income payments that seniors get as well. How do we roll it back where people can live comfortably, stay within their community, close to home, close to their grandkids, and have a successful community that way? When we also think about the neighborhood itself or being able to build new at this scale, well, this is super exciting. When we talk to nonprofits, charities, and co-ops who are trying to build new, we hear the same problems over and over again. It's really hard to find land. When we do, it's often a little parcel here and there, and you pay a lot more money if you buy a small thing than if you buy something in bulk. There's more people competing against it, and there's a higher cost per acre. Often the timelines, the processes, the fundraising processes for development don't work well with the processes, timelines, and level of risk taking that a community organization can take on. So this is potentially transformative. How do we bring different organizations that have been renting successfully properties in our community for decades, whether it is an organization like Victoria Park Homes, the many housing co-ops that we have as well, and bring in these trusted partners in order to help them grow and service these areas. We can also think about all of the ground floor amenities that will be created in this space as well, whether it's childcare, a new grocery store, different coffee shops. We need those spaces out in these areas, and good design includes good ground floor development. We need affordable homes for people, but also for the organizations and the small businesses that make our community great. So I think that's about it. The last thing I'll say, last two things. One is this is an opportunity as well to think about how do we create Indigenous housing units that are owned by Indigenous communities for Indigenous folks as well. That can be prioritized as part of this. And I really like the staff report and comments around making sure that any affordability, whether it's through an ownership model, which is really important too, or a rental model, ensures that these rents stay affordable forever. You don't want to hear me coming back in 20 years saying, all of these affordable units are up for sale now, all these people are at risk of being evicted. Let's secure those rents so for folks like me who now have these low rents in the community, it means I get to take the afternoon off to come talk to you rather than worrying about a second or third job. We can do that for other folks in the future as well. And the very last thing to say is all of these things, especially at scale, are challenging. There'll certainly be challenges doing this as well, but all of them can be overcome. The one thing that can't be overcome is if you're trying to pay your rent and you just don't make enough money to pay the bills. So when we think about parking, when we think about transportation, when we think about making sure that we're not building too high right against the borders where it's a challenge for existing neighbors, we can overcome that by being well-intentioned, hardworking folks who want to make this community better. But for someone who makes $800 a month to pay $1,200 a month in rent, if you're lucky enough to find that, you just can't do it. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sean, and you're always welcome here in our chambers. We appreciate the perspective you shared. Does anyone have any questions for the delegate? Yep, go ahead, Councillor Bodley.
Thanks to you, Mayor McCabe. Thanks, Sean, for coming out. You spoke highly of the proposal that's before us here today, and I wonder if I appreciate you doing so, but I wonder if maybe I could give you the opportunity to talk about anything that you would like to see different within the proposal, or anything that we should be contemplating as we move forward through the RFP process that would help achieve the goals that you alluded to in your delegation.
Yeah, thanks so much for the question, and I'm very supportive of the proposal. It's clear that staff and council put a lot of work into this and responded to community suggestions and feedback so far. I think that means a lot whenever they're, both a big challenge, but also these smaller issues that we have to deal with that are big for each of us individually, and seeing the progress from, the early stages of this process now, that's really important. I think in terms of a community housing organization perspective, there's a few things. One is let's make sure that if it's affordable on day one, it's affordable for perpetuity or in perpetuity. And that can be achieved by making sure that it's trusted organizations that will be owning these properties forever. And we think of all the nonprofit housing co-ops, the charities and nonprofits, they already face both they're supported by legislation and other requirements that make sure that they keep these rental rates affordable, in addition just to this being their ethos, their core reason for being in existence. The city can then put other restrictions on title as well to ensure that that stays in perpetuity. I'd be cautious about going too far down the land lease approach or prioritizing that over others. Instead, thinking what is the core objective of a land lease model? Well, it's to make sure that it stays affordable forever and always meets public objectives. There are multiple ways of doing that. One is working with trusted partners. The other, you can register certain restrictions on title as well. That may be a little more flexible, as Michelle mentioned, with the financing that's needed for these types of projects. So thinking more about the objective as opposed to prescribing the specific tool.
Thank you. Did you have a follow-up, Councillor Bodley? No. Okay. Any other comments or questions for the delegates? Oh, go ahead, Councillor Wright.
Thanks through you, Mayor. Thanks again for coming to delegate today. One of the things that we note on a recurring basis is just the financial challenges to building housing right now. And so I'm just wondering if you could share some of the perspectives from co-op housing and whether there are some specific financial obstacles that you're looking to overcome.
Yeah, it's really hard to do this work. And part of that, really the big one, is finding the land to build on. So by bringing this forward, you're already solving problem number one. We're a little bit of a different co-op in that we are raising money from charitable foundations and others in order to grow, and we're looking at multiple properties, which normally nonprofit housing co-ops are focused just on one. But I've been speaking with the Central Ontario Cooperative Housing Federation, my friend Alana, who works there as their ED, doing really fantastic work. And one of the reasons why they're interested in potentially building the very first new nonprofit housing cooperative in Waterloo region since the early 1990s, when Bob Ray was in power, on this site, why they're interested in building it here, is because a lot of their nonprofit housing co-op buildings were built back in the 70s and 80s. They weren't built with accessibility in mind. And there are a lot of folks who want to build or want to age in place. So could we almost create a retirement community for nonprofit housing co-op folks in the community? They get to stay within that community that they have lived in for decades and love. And at the same time, we're opening back up new townhouses in uptown Waterloo and downtown Kitchener that young families can move in rather than, one senior taking up 2-3 bedroom home in downtown or uptown. So we can think about some of these roll-on effects that come when we do something like this at scale. In terms of financing more generally, it's really important that we're able to access CMHC financing. You cannot do this work without CMHC. And, they make sure that they're protecting the public interest and their role in that, and they're quite serious about it, which is one of the reasons why things like land leases can be a little tough in order to make work with CMHC as the financer. But when you look at the financial model for building new, all of a sudden now there's no land cost. HST has been removed for purpose-built rentals. Development charges have been waived or exempted for purpose-built rentals as well. Plus we have some new CMHC financing programs that have come online. And there's actually new nonprofit housing co-op funding that's expected to launch within the next year as well. Taken all together, this is a pretty unique time. This certainly hasn't happened in my lifetime in terms of the scale of construction and the type of government support that's available for us to do this. So if we're able to take advantage of it now, while also potentially lining it up with the construction schedule required of the province to access provincial housing target money, this is a really compelling time to do this.
Thank you for that response. Did you have a follow-up, Councillor Wright? Okay. Any other comments or questions? Thank you, Sean.
Thanks, everybody.
I appreciate you taking time to come in today. Our next delegate is KLG. And Kay, you have 5 minutes. Welcome back, Kay. And if you want to lower, oh, you're good?
I think this will work.
Okay.
Yep, okay. Well, as usual, I have slides. And again, I want to thank you for the opportunity to come back again. And I'm really pleased, as you have said, councillors, and as I've heard in the community, for the accommodations and listening to the recommendation. And I'm particularly happy to see a more dense thing. And I know when I was talking about this with my friends in Waterloo Region, Yimby, they said, I can't believe you're saying that. But anyway, I am. But I do have one big remaining concern, and this is a tough one, and that's the definition of affordability. You're using the provincial definition that it's affordable for 60% for people in the 60th percentile and below. But the problem is that the way I understand it is that kind of means anybody, so there's a little chart that the region of Waterloo put out in 2022 to show what affordable housing looked at it. And so affordable would be affordable for those first 6 deciles. And what's shown as moderate income, high income people are on their own. And they've done it for both purchasing a house, which is the top graph, and rental ones. And purchasing, I don't care, because to me, purchasing a house is a privilege. But renting housing is a human right. And so I'm concerned about people that will never have the capital to invest in housing, but will need a place to live. And so you can see from this chart that they have here, in 2022, it wasn't too bad that even a 3-bedroom average rent was affordable by somebody in the 6th decile, the provincial definition. But if we move forward to what's happening now, rents have gone up considerably. And so even a 1-bedroom rent is barely affordable to somebody in the 6th decile of earning, which is a fairly high income. And I mean, it's as Sean pointed out too. Like in this case, it was $68,000 to $76,000 a person earning that. If they're doing this guideline of 30% of your household income going toward your rent, which is the CMHC guideline, it's the same one that bankers use. I think it's a good guideline too. So as long as you were making that much money, you could afford to rent a 1-bedroom apartment, but you couldn't afford a 2-bedroom or a 3-bedroom. And of course, in the little chart up at the top, people who are like a senior old age security can afford $818 a month for rent. So they're just, I mean, it's not, as Sean said, they're just not available. So that's why I have a problem with this 60% definition. And I think, and I don't know how you do this, but I think it should be like a lower ceiling for it. Because I feel that people deserve housing. And I kind of looked at, okay, if you're a person on minimum wage, working full-time, 35 hours a week, 52 weeks of the year, which most people in minimum wage jobs are lucky to get that. We know that's notorious for having part-time incomes. I figured they would be making, I think it was about $31,000. So if we went back to that other chart, you know, they're not able to afford the rents that are out there. Somebody on minimum wage couldn't do this. So I don't know that that's an acceptable target either, but to me, it's a better one than the higher one. So I feel that that's a problem with that definition of affordability. And I also, you've heard me say this before, that long-term affordability is key, and I'm really happy to see that
Okay,
in
you have
the
1
RP.
minute left,
Okay.
just so you know.
And the last thing, this the other little tweak. You're talking about reducing transportation emissions, and people want to reduce parking, and I'm all for that. But I would like to see some proposals from the proponents about how they would do this. Not just, you know, like we've already started talking to the GRT, or we're going to offer car share memberships as part of the lease or part of the ownership. And also, this is something that comes up at Committee of Adjustment all the time, that there's adequate space for deliveries and for unloading, because if people don't have cars, then they've got to get deliveries. And you just see this over and over again. It's just not there. So those are, and the last one I didn't put on the slide is make sure there's room to put the snow when it's shoveled in the winter. Okay.
Okay, thanks very much, Kay. I appreciate you making time to come in to share your thoughts on this. She's walked away from but I'm just going to check and see if anyone has any questions for you, Kay. Does anyone have any questions for the delegate? Okay, there's no questions directly for you. Thanks, Kay. Appreciate it. Okay, so thank you very much to both of the delegates who came in. For additional questions of staff, Councillor Bodley.
Yeah, thanks through you, Mayor McCabe. Just a question about Kay's presentation around the definition of affordable and how that's sort of referenced in our reports. And I'm wondering if maybe you can speak to how we will rank, I guess, for lack of a better word, RFPs, or what the thought process is in terms of whether we're going to be targeting different levels of affordability through the terms of reference through that RFP process. So not necessarily all of the units are proposed at this 60% definition, but they're proposed at sort of different rates. Is that being contemplated? And maybe if you could speak to that, that'd be great. Thanks, Michelle.
Through the mayor to Councillor Bodley. I think that I have a similar answer to this question as I did about the land lease sort of question, and that is, you know, I'd like to recommend we cast a broad net, meaning that we don't come forward with an RFP that says we know exactly what the right rents are or how affordable things need to be and where the range is. I propose that we work within the definition of affordability, which means we are working with that 60th percentile threshold. So that's the upper threshold, recognizing that affordable units can be anywhere below that threshold. And then we award additional points for those that come in with the highest depths of affordability, and we'll probably be looking at a good balance of tenure as well, because tenure actually matters quite a bit when it comes to affordability. Something that's affordable to an owner is generally not affordable to a renter. So that's how I'd recommend we proceed. Probably, though, with the additional caveat of that we should set a minimum threshold of some kind. With the region, working with the region, they've offered to work with us to help us develop this RFP, and they've got quite a bit of experience with surplus lands that they have used for affordability, and recognizing that sometimes you know, we may be in a position where we can offer additional incentives and secure greater affordability than the region has been able to do. I'd like to propose that we work with the region as well to establish that minimum threshold, but then reward those proponents that come in with higher depths of affordability, if that makes sense.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bassett.
Maybe the answer to this is probably similar, and I just wanted to highlight, and I think you noted it down, but Kay's suggestion about car share memberships, or given it sounds like you're going to be working pretty closely with the region, maybe offering bus passes or things like that. I just wanted to highlight it to say I thought that was a really great idea and maybe could be included as suggestions in the RFP, or however, there's probably a million other great ideas. I just really loved that one.
Thank you, Councillor. Did you have a follow-up, or sorry, I should let staff respond.
Oh,
sorry.
Through the mayor to Councillor Vasic, I was just going to say, absolutely, I think the objective is to, it's not very often we have 25 acres that we can start from scratch with. It's such a rare opportunity, and you know, recognizing that this site is not located in uptown, so it's going to have some parking and some conventional car use. But there is a huge opportunity to use creative solutions to reduce transportation emissions. So yeah, I think Kay had some really good suggestions, and we'll definitely be exploring those.
Thank you. Other comments, questions from council? Okay, seeing none, then I'll just add my thanks again to you, Michelle, and through you to staff who, you know, Mr. Cotter, Ms. Van Niekerk, and others who, sorry? No, there are no more delegates, no. Yeah, no, there are no more delegates, yeah. So just thanks to staff who prepared the in-person community consultation and the online community consultation so quickly, and then got this report back to us in a really timely manner. Really appreciate it. One thing I would like to add is just a brief reminder for anyone watching that, I mean, this type of work, as you said, it's a rare opportunity for us. Wouldn't be possible without the federal funding through the Housing Accelerator Fund. So just want to make sure that I give kudos to them for that program. And again, as we said in April when this came to us, personally, I think this is one of the most significant decisions we'll make in this council term, given not only the scale and scope of the need for affordable and attainable housing in our community, but also the impact that this will have, I think, more broadly across the entire community. So with that, unless anyone has any other, yes, you have,
I'm sorry, may I just check in about this? But I don't know if this is an item where it's just people who have pre-registered
yes,
as a
it's just,
delegate?
it's an item when people had to register as a delegate.
Thank
yeah,
you.
this
Okay, I
isn't a-
just needed clarification from one person, but thank you
Okay,
everyone
yeah.
so much.
Yeah, no, this isn't a formal public hearing. This is a, yeah, people needed to register as a delegate. So with that, there's 4 recommendations here, and I will put it to a vote. I need a mover, moved by Councillor Freeman, seconded by Councillor Wright. All in favor? That is carried unanimously. And again, thank you, council, thank you, staff. This is a really momentous decision, and I think will serve us really, really well, you know, in the short and the very long term. I said during my State of the City address that balancing the needs of the now and the needs of the 10, 20, 30 years from now is really challenging and really important for us to think about what do we think is best for the community now, but also in the long term. And I think this is an example of I think this is a really important example of providing that kind of leadership and that kind of decision making for our community. So thank you very much, and we look forward to the next step when this is filed on the environmental registry. And we will look to the province and Minister Calandra then for a response from him from the MZO. Thank you very much, Michelle. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is the Infrastructure Replacement and Rehabilitation Needs 2024 to 2026 Implementation Plan, and we have staff with us today. Are there questions, comments from council about this report? Seeing none. Moved by Councillor Freeman, seconded by Councillor Bassick. All in favor? That is carried. Okay, and the next item on here is a motion, or sorry, is a report, I should say, on the AMO Board of Director nominations prepared by the clerk. This is in support of myself nominating myself to run on behalf of the city for a large urban caucus position and to be one of AMO's board of directors. So it requires a resolution support from council. So I would look to you to support that. Moved by with a comment. Okay. Councillor Freeman.
I'm happy to move the motion, but I would like to remind my colleagues when we're at AMO that as part of the election, it really matters to get out there and talk to delegates and encourage them to vote for the mayor. And on top of that, there'll be a large urban caucus luncheon, which is an important part of the election piece. So I'm not sure how many people are planning to go to AMO, and most importantly, you need to vote. Because I think I won with 35 votes the first year that I ran, and well, you have to remember, it's only delegates that fit into the large urban caucus bracket that are permitted to vote for those positions. So when you start breaking, and it has to be an elected member, so staff don't get a vote. So by the time you break down all of those categories, there aren't really a whole lot of people that can vote. And it's definitely one of those things where I think you can vote for 6 members of the caucus depending on how many people are running. So I just want to, I'm not sure who's registered to go to AMO. I know that I am. So, sorry, how many do we have going? Okay, awesome, yeah. So, yeah, I'm just saying there's a role for us to play, and being organized and tracking those pieces are important, because sometimes the vote stuff happens when there's sessions. So you have to make an effort, and so
Okay, I think I've recruited my new campaign manager. Thank you, Councillor Freeman.
I think I served on AMO for almost 9 years, and I loved it. It's a really great organization. They do good work, and I was very thankful for the council support I had at the time, too. So, yeah, good luck.
Thank you very much. I hopefully have 5 votes already then. Don't shrug your shoulders. So moved by Counselor Freeman, seconded by Counselor Hanmer. All in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And I will, I'll let you know about how the campaign rolls out, and that will also include some of the staff who are going to be at AMO as well. You might not be able to vote, but you can spread the word, absolutely. Thank you very much, though, in all seriousness, I really appreciate it. Okay, so there are no consideration of notice of motions, there's no notice of motions, there's no correspondence or communications, no unfinished business. Are there any questions, Councillor Wright?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. Just wondering if staff can potentially consider the following. Given the net zero by 2050 commitment, the city's corporate climate action plan, the development of a green building policy, the rental housing report coming to council next month, the urban forest management plan consultation underway currently, I'm wondering if we could look at an all-of-city approach to extreme heat in partnership with public health and emergency response partners. And my reasoning here is that responding to extreme heat requires a proactive approach in the context of a changing climate. And the bar is moving seasonally. We could be seeing prolonged heat in May and October, and the increase in rental housing and towers means we will have more people moving into housing that will require strong controls. And overall, since the pandemic, we have increased socioeconomic vulnerability and a population trending older demographically, which are exacerbating factors. So, just keeping in mind, Montreal had an extreme heat event in 2018 with 66 deaths. BC had one in 2021 with 619 deaths. So the impacts are exponential as we move forward, and I think it'd be really wise for us to be on that proactive side of things and to take a really integrated approach to extreme heat.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. We'll just look to staff to take that away and come back with either a report or we can discuss that possibly in June.
Yeah, through you, Mayor McCabe, to Councillor Wright, we'll certainly take that one away, and maybe, as the Mayor noted, we can assemble a little bit of information or frame it out a little bit.
Yeah.
Just to return back and make sure we're on the right track from
Sounds great.
Council's perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson, and thank you, Councillor Wright, for raising that. It's really important. Did you have a follow-up? No. Councillor Wright?
No.
No, okay, I
that's
just
fine.
noticed your microphone's still on. Councillor Freeman?
I just had a quick question. It's kind of word specific. First off, I wanted to say thank you to transportation team for the work they've been doing in the Colonial Acres area to resurface the roads. There's, throughout the subdivision, there's a large gap between the asphalt road edge and the individual properties. And I was thinking the city was gonna come back and fill those in and seed them. Am I right, or do individuals, homeowners need to take on that work? And if you don't know today and you wanna get back to me, that's fine too.
Yeah, through you, Mayor McCabe, to Councillor Freeman, thank you for the question. I believe it's a city's responsibility to come back, but we can certainly take that back and reach out to you and have an answer for you.
Yeah, I think that they're coming back. It's been quite a while, and the gap is maybe a foot or more. It would take a significant amount of fill to close that gap. Thank you.
Okay,
Awesome.
thank you, Councillor Freeman. Thank you, Mr. Henderson. Any other questions? Anything else there? No? Okay. New business? Yes, Councillor Bodley.
I just want to steal Councillor Vasek's thunder and go first. No. I'll leave that for someone else. I just wanted to do a formal thank you to the Vista Hills Community Association. They hosted a community picnic yesterday, and I know oftentimes when we attend these neighborhood sort of events, if you're a parent with a kid, you show up, there's a lot of fun games going on, there's a way to connect with the community, and it's really awesome. It's community building at its best, and I thank everyone on staff for the work that they do to enable these events as well too. But when you show up at one of these events, you just sort of think they magically happen, and in reality, it's many volunteers on the neighborhood associations, the board, an army of volunteers often who put these things together. And it isn't until you kind of lose your neighborhood association that you realize how much effort went into it. And so I just want, since the Vista Hills Community Association put on this event, I want to say thank you publicly for that. It was a great time. It was awesome to see so many people out engaging. And yeah, that's it for me.
Thank you very much. Yes, Councillor Bassett.
Yes, well, thank you. You all know that I participated in the Easter Seals Dancing with the Stars event on Friday. Thank you all for your financial or moral support. There were 250 people who attended, and $80,000 was raised for Easter Seals, which will send 32 kids to camp that is fully accessible. And not only is it that great for removing physical barriers, but it's which is obviously a practical challenge throughout the year. But these are kids who, not all of them, but some of them will have a harder time at school because they can't participate every day, and then will also get left out. And so it's really nice for these kids, as they've said themselves in the videos and speaking, to be able to just be around people who just kind of get it. They can just fully be themselves. Also, thank you, Mayor, for cheering me on. My family is a little bit more subdued, so the mayor really brought her A game to cheer me on and made many jokes. My table also gave me 2 nice messages, one from my kids, I think probably from my youngest, because when I said thank you to my oldest, he was like, what? And they also suggested that I dance as though I had finished my PhD. So I did. Anyways, the event was such a beautiful representation of community and connection, and small businesses participated. A couple of small business owners or local business owners and raised the most amount of money. One guy raised $24,000, another guy raised $6,000 and sold like 10 tables. And there were 2 dance studios as well who were participating. Underdog Dance Studio, which you can see uptown. They have a second location now on Park Street, which may technically be in Kitchener. I honestly don't know what the dividing line is on Park. And 10C Dance Corp, where my dance instructor came from. And so just keep them in mind if you ever want to dance. Of course, there's salsa in the square for free on Fridays, and then 10C has various events for free as well, and otherwise you can pay for their lessons also. Anyway, so thank you, and it was really fun, and also I'm very glad it's over. And the other thing I really wanted to highlight was the production that Greenlight Arts Theatre Company just put on called Late Company. It was really excruciating to watch. It was about a queer kid who had died by suicide, and the parents of that kid came together over dinner with the parents and also the kid who had picked on the queer kid at school. It's really hard to describe this play, but it was really excruciating to watch. But this is what Greenlight Arts does. It takes these really, really hard concepts. It brings people who make theater and makes us think about them through all sorts of different lenses. You feel connected to the story, even if it's not yours, and it makes you leave thinking all sorts of different possibilities. I haven't stopped thinking about the play since, and I just started crying at Ethel's over dinner thinking about it. Anyways, but the good news there is that they have done great work for the last 10 years, and they want to keep going for many years, and so they're going to be launching a fundraising campaign. So stay tuned for that and share as you can and want to. And their new project announcements will be coming in June. That's it for me.
Great, thank you very much, Councillor Bassick. And I would correct you and say you didn't participate. You You crushed it on the dance floor. I have a couple of very short videos there. She did really, really well. And took a lot of courage, I would imagine, to get out there and do that to all the people who participated in that. It really was. And just to your point about the kids that get to go to camp, one of their ambassadors talked about how, like I think she has cerebral palsy. She's always has to use a power chair, but at camp she discovered with a noodle she could walk in a pool, and it's the first time in her entire life, I think she was about 12, that she'd been able to actually walk. So really moving experience. But yeah, Councillor Bassick, you did fantastic out there. So yeah, it actually was really a lot of fun to watch. So any other new business that anyone wants? Yes, Councillor Rowe.
Through you, Mayor. Yes, I just wanted to highlight the Special Olympics Ontario that came to town on Friday until Saturday evening. And I attended the opening ceremonies, which was just incredible. The energy, the excitement of all the participants was fantastic, and also the volunteers that put this on. And a shout out to the Waterloo Regional Police Service, who did an incredible amount of work and who really showed up for the athletes. So it was very exciting, and I think that the city should be very proud of hosting it, and just again, the excitement and thrill of the whole event for the participants. Thank you.
It was great, and Waterloo Rec Center, Memorial Rec Center looked phenomenal on Friday night Thursday night. Was it Thursday night? Yeah, Thursday night. The energy in that room was just electric. So yeah, it was, and I got to hand out medals on Saturday afternoon to 10 different basketball teams, and there was some really good basketball played, at least in the games that I watched. But yeah, there were some really great athletes there, so it was a wonderful experience. So, anything else, Council, under new business? Seeing none, there was a tremendous amount of just other events and activities that are hosted by the community as well. So thank you to everyone who does that, puts so much time and energy into enlivening the city across the city. So enactment of bylaws. Moved by Councillor Bassick, seconded by Councillor Rowe. All in favor? Okay, and now we will adjourn. I'm looking for a motion to adjourn. That's Councillor Wright, and seconded by Councillor Hamner. I'm looking at it in my peripheral vision. Councillor, okay, and all in favor. That is carried, and we are adjourned. Thank you very much, Council.